Damien and his friends thought it would be hilarious to leave me alone in a deserted coastal town outside Barcelona at 5 in the morning, no phone, no money, no explanation of whether they were coming back or not. When Elena opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was the soft orange glow of the Mediterranean sunrise stretching across the horizon, painting the old stone walls of the town with a quiet warmth. Yet inside her, nothing was warm. It was a strange mix of calm and sharpness, the kind that comes not from fear, but from realization. There was no Damien beside her, no loud chatter from his drunken friends, no sign of the yacht they had arrived on just hours earlier. Only the sound of slow waves brushing against the rocks and a silence deep enough to expose every lie she had ignored for years. People thought Elena stayed quiet because she was fragile. Damien especially believed her silence was the easiest thing to manipulate. He mistook stillness for weakness. But today, standing alone on a cold Spanish shore, she finally understood something she had been denying for too long. Her silence was not weakness. Her silence had always been strategy. The streets around her were empty, the shops still asleep behind their aged wooden shutters. The breeze carried the smell of sea salt and something older, something that felt like history watching her. She tightened her loose white shirt, tied her hair with her trembling fingers, and instead of crying, she began to walk. Each step felt like it peeled away another layer of the version of herself Damien wanted her to be. Memories replayed in her mind like a slow, painful film, Damien dismissing her concerns, rolling his eyes when she spoke, laughing at her soft voice in front of his friends. Elena, stop overthinking. Elena, don't be dramatic. Elena, calm down. Those words had cut deeper than any abandonment could. But standing here, in a foreign place with nothing but her breath, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: control. For once, nobody was talking over her. No one was interrupting her. No one was deciding for her. The silence around her finally belonged to her. At the far end of the beach, an elderly Spanish woman was opening her tiny bakery. She looked up, her wrinkled face softening when she saw Elena's tired but fierce eyes. ¿Estás bien, Nina? Elena hesitated, then smiled, a small, real smile. I think, yes. Maybe for the first time. Without a word, the woman handed her a steaming cup of coffee. Elena wrapped her hands around it, took a deep breath, and with the first sip, something in her settled, something hardened, something woke up. This wasn't abandonment. This was an opportunity. This was the exact moment her story would change. She wasn't going to wait for rescue. She wasn't going to call for help. She was going to rise, and they would never see it coming. Before we continue, please subscribe to support stories of women reclaiming their power. The days that followed were a blur of emotions, but Elena knew she couldn't afford to stay lost in them. She had been left alone, abandoned in a strange town, with nothing but the weight of betrayal and an uncertain future hanging over her. But the moment she walked away from the beach, the moment she took control of her breath, she realized that this was the turning point. For years, she had lived in Damien's shadow, always second-guessing herself, always making room for his opinions while suppressing her own. The silence she had carried for so long wasn't weakness, it had been her shield, her way of surviving in a world that constantly demanded more of her than she could give. Now, standing in the heart of this foreign place, Elena felt the stirrings of something new. There was no turning back. With every step, she was shedding the old version of herself, the one who had put everyone else's needs ahead of her own. The girl who had once been so willing to please. That version of Elena was gone, and she wasn't going to allow it to creep back in, no matter how hard Damien tried. When she arrived at the small, unassuming cafe tucked at the corner of the street, she realized something had shifted inside her. The barista behind the counter greeted her with a smile, but it wasn't just the kindness of a stranger, it was a reflection of what she was learning to give herself. A café con leche, señora? The man asked. Elena nodded, her fingers brushing the edge of the counter as she steadied herself. The warm cup felt like the first moment of peace she had experienced in ages. As she sipped the coffee, the warmth spread through her chest, and for the first time since she had been abandoned by Damien, she felt something that resembled control. The world had not ended, despite the loss she had experienced. No, this was only the beginning. As she sat in that quiet cafe, Elena realized the most important lesson she had yet to learn. Sometimes, you must walk alone to rediscover the strength you never knew you had. And she was no longer afraid to do that. In this quiet town, far from the chaos and manipulation that Damien had inflicted on her life, Elena began to understand something deeply profound. She had always been enough. She had always had the power to decide her own fate, but it had taken her being abandoned in a foreign place to truly see it. The life she had envisioned for herself was not with Damien by her side, dragging her down, pretending to care. The life she had been dreaming of was one where she was the author of her own story, a story that would no longer be defined by his cruelty, his betrayals, or his selfishness. Elena was finally free to write the next chapter on her own terms. The days that followed became a whirlwind of quiet determination. Elena didn't know what came next, but she knew she couldn't remain stuck in the past. She started to explore the town more, meeting new people and discovering parts of herself she had long buried. Each day, she stepped further away from the woman who had been betrayed, from the woman who had been dismissed, and closer to the person she was becoming. There was a freedom in this unfamiliar place, a freedom she never realized she needed. It was a kind of silent rebellion, not against the town or the people around her, but against the version of herself she had been for so long. A version shaped by the needs and demands of everyone else, especially Damien. Now, for the first time, she was beginning to feel something that she had long forgotten, her own desires, her own voice. Her first few encounters with the locals were tentative. She spoke little at first, careful not to make a scene, but each time she connected with someone, a piece of her broke free. There was an elderly couple who owned a small bookstore on the corner, a quiet refuge where Elena would spend hours sifting through the pages of novels, letting the words sweep her into worlds where betrayal wasn't the only story. The couple became her first true friends in the town, offering her their space, their stories, and the kind of quiet solidarity Elena had been craving. The bookstore became her sanctuary, where she could lose herself in the comfort of books that had nothing to do with her broken past. It was there, surrounded by stories of strong women, resilient characters who overcame adversity, that Elena rediscovered her own voice. She wasn't just the quiet, passive woman Damien had tried to shape her into. She was capable of more. Each conversation with the bookstore owners, each morning walk through the streets of the coastal town, reinforced that truth. She had spent so long living for others, caring for others, that she had forgotten the importance of caring for herself. The waves of the ocean, the quiet chatter of the locals, and the smell of fresh bread in the air became the soundtrack of her healing. One afternoon, while sitting at a small table outside a cafe, Elena received a message from her daughter, Sarah. She hadn't heard from her in days, and when the message popped up on her screen, her heart raced. It read, "Mom, I've got this. We're going to be okay. I've been thinking about it, and I'm ready to help. Don't worry, we'll fix everything." Elena smiled as she read it, feeling a wave of relief and pride wash over her. Sarah had always been the quiet one, but now, her words were firm and full of promise. Her daughter was growing up before Elena's very eyes, taking control of her own life, just as Elena was learning to do. For so long, Elena had been the one protecting Sarah, but now, her daughter was stepping up to protect them both. Elena's heart swelled with a quiet joy. She had taught Sarah how to be strong, how to stand tall, and now, her daughter was teaching her the same. That afternoon, Elena made a vow to herself that she would not let Damien's betrayal define her. She would not let his selfishness steal any more of her peace. Her journey had only just begun, but she was no longer the woman who had been abandoned on the shore. She was someone stronger, someone capable of rewriting her own future, and no one, not even Damien, could take that from her. With every step she took, Elena realized that the life she had always wanted was already within her reach. She was free. And this time, she wasn't waiting for anyone to come and save her. She had found her own strength, and it was something no one could ever take away. It was on the fourth day in the small coastal town that Elena's past returned to her in a way she had not expected. She had grown accustomed to the rhythm of her new life, the quiet mornings by the beach, the laughter of the local children playing in the streets, and the comforting sense of peace that had started to settle in her chest. But then, her phone rang. It was Damien. She hesitated before answering. His voice was frantic, almost pleading, as if he had just realized the weight of the betrayal he had left behind. "Elena, where is the money?" he demanded, the panic clear in his voice. "Where did you put it?" Elena took a deep breath, steadying herself. The old version of her would have caved in at this moment, ready to apologize, to try to fix things for him, as she had always done. But the new Elena, the woman standing tall on this foreign shore, knew she was done with that. "I didn't take it, Damien," she said, her voice calm but firm. "You took it from us. You made your choice, and now you have to live with it." He didn't respond immediately. She could hear his heavy breathing on the other end of the line, the sound of a man who had been caught, who had thought he could walk away from everything without consequence. "Elena, please," he begged, his voice softening. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I don't know what happened. Please, I'll make it right." The words hung in the air between them, but Elena didn't feel any sympathy. She didn't feel anger, either. She just felt nothing. "No," she said simply. "You can't fix this. You had the chance to make things right, but you chose not to. This is over, Damien. Don't call me again." And with that, she ended the call. For the first time, Elena felt free. The man who had once ruled her world, who had manipulated her, made her feel small, was now powerless. He had no hold over her anymore. It was a quiet victory, one that didn't need to be shouted to the world. She didn't need to prove anything to anyone. She had already won. As she put the phone down, Elena looked out over the horizon, the same view that had once felt so foreign and cold. Now, it was a symbol of everything she had reclaimed. She wasn't waiting for him to fix things. She wasn't waiting for anyone. She was standing on her own, stronger than she had ever been. In the days that followed, the weight of the decision she had made settled into her bones. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about anger. It was about reclaiming her life, her peace, and her future. Damien had stolen from her once, but it was no longer his to control. She had taken everything back, her power, her voice, and her future. By the time Damien tried to contact Elena again, she had already moved forward in ways she had never imagined. He sent messages, pleading with her to reconsider, but Elena had learned the most important lesson of all: some things, once broken, can never be fixed. She no longer needed his apology. She no longer needed his validation. The woman she had become was stronger than the one he had tried to manipulate for so long. In a final act of defiance, Elena sat down at the small wooden table in her room and composed a letter, not to him, but to herself. She wrote about the years of doubt, the moments of silence, and the times she had allowed herself to be walked over. But she also wrote about the strength she had found within herself, the resilience she had discovered in the quiet moments of abandonment. And at the end of the letter, she wrote 3 words that would change everything: "I am enough." She sealed the letter and placed it in the drawer of the desk, a reminder of her transformation. Elena didn't need a man to define her worth anymore. She had discovered that her value was not based on anyone's opinion but her own. And as the sun set over the horizon, she knew that her journey was far from over. There were still dreams to chase, paths to walk, and adventures to be had. Sarah, who had already shown her the power of self-belief, was waiting for her on the porch when Elena returned home. Her daughter stood tall, her face a reflection of the same quiet strength Elena had come to embody. She smiled as she saw her mother walk toward her. "Ready for the next chapter, Mom?" Elena looked at Sarah and nodded. "Yes, I think I am." Together, they would write the next chapter of their lives, not one defined by betrayal, but one where they reclaimed their power and found their true strength. And this time, they would face whatever came next, not with fear, but with the confidence that they could rise above it. Elena had finally stepped into the woman she was always meant to be, a woman who was no longer defined by her past, but by her own strength, her resilience, and her unwavering belief in herself. In the end, women don't just survive. They rise. Quietly. Powerfully. unrecognizably. If Elena's journey from abandonment to unstoppable power touched you, hit the like button right now. My favorite part was when Elena finally realized her worth and reclaimed her life. What was your favorite moment? Tell me in the comments. And don't forget, subscribe to Masked Bonds 1 for more emotional, cinematic stories of women reclaiming their power.